To create safety, we have to have a habit of repair. We have to be so committed to repair that as soon as we can, we come back to it and we do that. So creating a culture of repair would be like anytime I get into a conflict with my partner, within a certain period of time, I come back and I resolve it and we come back to connection. A lot of people permiss this thing where it's like, I'm just going to go into my resentments and my frustrations for as long as I want until I feel ready. That's garbage. That's selfish, and that's ultimately going to harm the relationship. If you want to create safety in relationship, give yourself 48 hours max for the worst of them. And what repair looks like is it's going, baby, I'm sorry that we got into that thing last night. I'm sorry that we got really kinked up on something. And I'm sorry I said what I said. It's about owning the thing that shouldn't have happened, first of all. And then it's about, what do I need to hear that I missed last night? Or can I express to you what I need you to hear that I think we missed last night? And can we just kind of create space around it? So getting good at repair is staying really tethered to the original charge, the original issue, and resolving that through empathy, understanding, awareness, and a commitment to action.
Welcome to the Heart of Man podcast, a podcast for any man seeking to live in alignment with his deepest core and lead a life of profound meaning and connection. I'm your host, Alex Lehman, and I'm here to empower you through transformative conversations, eye-opening insights, and practical wisdom. Join me now as we venture into the heart of man. Let's dive in. Max Trombly is a devoted husband, proud father of two, and a passionate advocate for living with purpose, passion, and depth. As a transformational men's coach and relationship expert, Max is on a mission to liberate the men and women he comes in contact with toward living lives of exceptional love and depth within relationship, as well as living from a place of authentic expression and deep, fulfilling purpose. In recent years, Max has risen to widespread acclaim for his straightforward and transformative approach, breaking down the complexities of modern dating, addressing the challenges that arise in relationships, and offering actionable strategies for creating deep, lasting connections. He specializes in helping individuals and couples reignite intimacy, navigate conflict, and foster trust and understanding in their relationships. Beyond relationships, Max guides men towards becoming more powerful and authentic leaders, whether it's in their personal lives, their families, or their businesses, inspiring them to lead with purpose, clarity, and integrity. Almost a decade ago, Max found himself in a situation that, on the surface, appeared to align with society's markers of success. However, underneath, he found himself stuck in an unfulfilling marriage. Through a series of profound moments, he came to the realization that the life he had built was not the one he truly desired to live. He knew something radical had to change. This ultimately led him to leave his marriage and embark on a conscious process of grieving, reconciling his past relationships, and taking full ownership for the ways that he had disconnected from himself. On the other side of this process, he clarified his desires for a future relationship rooted in authenticity and deep connection. This clarity eventually guided him to meet his now wife and create the family he had always aspired to have. Reflecting on this journey, Max shares, to go from the end of a marriage to finding the absolute love of my life and a co-created, deeply passionate relationship took a tremendous amount of learning, personal transformation, and determination. In our conversation together, we unpacked his own journey of moving from an unfulfilling marriage to rediscovering a deep sense of alignment in his own life. We explored key themes such as the importance of grieving, the necessity of reconciling past relationships, and what that process can look like. Max shares how we can approach the dating realm with deep clarity about what we truly want and need while refraining from settling for less. From there, we shifted the focus towards what it actually looks like for us as men to become leaders of our relationships, and some of the things for us to consider if we want to lead our love life well. We discussed clearing resentments and navigating conflict, and we closed with a conversation on men's work and the lasting impact Max hopes to make in his life. This is a conversation that you don't want to miss if you feel somewhat stuck in the areas of dating, but also aspire to lead your relationships better with a sense of commitment and purpose. What I really value in Max is his unwavering commitment to breaking down complex subject matters and creating simplicity, offering a sense of empowerment, clarity, and direction. And this is something that clearly shines through in this interview. Without further ado, let's dive in. Welcome back, everybody, to yet another episode at the Heart of Man. My name is Alex, and I'm your host, and I'm incredibly excited to be having Max Trombly here with us today. Max is a men's work facilitator, he's a coach, and he's also a practitioner of conscious love. His mission is to liberate people toward living lives of exceptional love and depth within relationships, as well as living a life from a full place of authentic expression and personal fulfillment. Max, I welcome you to the podcast.
Thanks, man. I'm here. I'm glad to be here. I'm excited to be on it.
Absolutely. It was definitely an excitement for me as well when you agreed to coming on. One of the things that
Awesome.
seems incredibly evident when I dove a little bit into the work that you do, it seems very clear to me that you're really all about relationships. I'm curious to hear, what is it about the field or the realm of relationships that fascinates you so deeply?
Yeah. Well, let me start by saying this. So I'm a husband, I'm a father, and my home is where I live. And everything I do in the world, the amount of power I have and the capacity to do what I'm doing in the world is 100% related to home. How does it feel? What am I waking up in? If I wake up in a home that's discordant, it doesn't feel good, the relationship isn't doing well, or there is none, and I'm alone, you're approaching life from a pretty disempowered state. However, if you're crushing it in your relationship, you feel good about how you love and are loved, your intimacy is on fire, like life is good in the home. When you walk out the door and go to crush it in life, that's a completely different man. That's a man who is not operating from a lack of needs or fulfillment. That's a man who's like, yeah, fucking right on, let's go. And so why I believe it's so important that we look at relationship as a non-negotiable in terms of getting it right, doing it well, and creating beautifully within it, is because just the day-to-day experience of a man's life is 100% related to the quality of his relationship. Either it empowers him, lights him up, has him feeling good, or there's something that is like not working and it's just sort of a constant drain on our energy and our awareness, and it's like, yeah, so that's the first thing. The second thing, we've really gone astray culturally. Since the dawn of mankind, life has been relatively simple. We create families and we serve our families, and that's kind of it. We're here to foster our kids into the greatness of their life. That's what the human experience is. And we've gotten to this place culturally where it's so me, me, me. It's like, what am I going to do? What am I going to achieve? Where am I going to travel? What experience am I going to go on? And by doing that, we've really lost the depth of importance about what life is really about. And, what I will say is that, 7 or 8 years ago, I interviewed a bunch of elders about, life and, what is it all about? And like, what are the most important things to life? And every single one of them said the same thing, which is like, no matter what achievements you've had in life, they're secondary to the depth of relationship, love, and how you raised your kids. And that really impacted me. It really gave me like a solid North Star of understanding. If you interview a bunch of people that are like 65 to 85, and you ask them about what matters in life, they're all going to say the same thing. It's about love. And so I was like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
And now I live from that place. I live from that place of creating impeccable relationship, really like shepherding my kids really well, and really recognizing that everything else I do in the world is actually for this. It's for the quality of my home, the quality of my life, the quality of my life in home with my wife and kids. That's it.
Yeah, there's so many as well strings already that I can pull on, but I just want to maybe begin by commenting one of the things that really fascinates me as well already, 4 minutes into this conversation is just the depth that I perceive in terms of how you know yourself and as well what you're here to do, and then as well where as well you're going. And I'm curious to hear what led you to have such a deep conviction, such a deep understanding of who you really are, what you're here to
Yeah.
do, and where you're going.
Yeah. Well, that's a really interesting question. I mean, without going into my whole life story, I grew up, north of Boston, Massachusetts. My dad was a businessman. My mom was just a devotional woman of God and life. And interestingly, my dad was sort of an atheist engineer. So I grew up with this interesting family. But what I had is I had an incredibly loving mother. And she was sick for most of my life and she passed away when I was young. So I lost that love really early on. And that's an important piece here. what then happened over the next, 20, 30 years is really interesting. I spent 10 years in the music industry playing on stages all across the Northeast. I had a recording studio. So I really like lived the life of an artist through music. And then the next 10 years, I lived the life of an artist through photography. And so, there was no shortage of incredible experiences. I traveled the world. I did all these cool things. And yet at age 36, and I was married, and I had bought a farm in rural Virginia, and I had achieved all these kind of markers like successful business, beautiful farm, and I was about to, pull the trigger on having kids. I realized that my life was like empty. Something was really missing. And I was like, what the hell where did I go wrong? And what it was I had chose the wrong partner to marry the first time around, and she couldn't serve my needs. She couldn't serve my desires. She was stuck in her own kind of, I don't want to go into the depth of this, but she had a mental illness that kept her kind of stuck in herself and her own emotional expression constantly. And I just felt lost and empty. I was 36 years old, and I was like, where did I go wrong? And so I read a bunch of books. I read a bunch of books on how to do love right. I read some autobiographies on different men. I started to meditate, and it was in the meditations where I was like, wow, there's something that's really missing with my life. And I decided to just pull the plug on it, filed for divorce, and I just had a real strong do-over moment. And so I reclaimed joy and play first, and then I went and I dated with this goal of, I want to find a woman that wants to love me. I want to find a woman that wants to create a family. I want to find a woman who's willing to be like a real partner in this life, energized, vital, resilient in love, and the capacity to serve each other in love. And once I did that, I just realized, wow, this was the missing thing all along. And because I'm living it, I'm living this thing, and I'm like, oh my God, like people are missing it. Like they just don't see how important this is. Through my life, I lost love when I was young because my mom passed away. And then I did all these things that were incredible experiences, but none of them really filled my deepest soul. And it wasn't until I stopped this kind of like just going with my life. It wasn't until I actually like sat in the woods and listened to the wind and heard the animals in the trees. It wasn't until I actually like just stopped and said, what is going on here? That I was able to recognize I'm missing the core component that matters more than anything, which is healthy, safe, juicy, passionate love.
It really seemed like the turning point for you was in slowing down and really asking yourself honestly, where you're currently at and as well where you want to go. And I noticed that with a lot of the individuals as well that I speak to, just this simple act of slowing down is already an incredible hard act to do. And I'm curious to hear, what do you believe makes it so hard to slow down, just to truly bring the mirror in front of us and really to ask ourselves honestly, how am I really doing? And is this the life that I really want to live? Because it seems like that was really the turning point as well for you.
Yeah. Well, to answer your question, what is it that stops us from slowing down? It's habitual thought forms and a lack of safety. I believe most people are just kind of running on these habitual thought forms like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that. Like, and they're always thinking 10 steps ahead of their own reality. The second thing around safety is we're always chasing something like, I need to do the next thing. I need to get the next check. I need to make the next, So there's this like mouse wheel that we get into, and we're kind of programmed into it through the school system and just Western civilization in terms of how we are operating as, career as God, money as safety. So the thing is, we have to recognize where we're in these habitual, unconscious, spiraling thought forms, and we need to go, enough. Like what's true? Because it's not true. We're operating from our nervous system, and I mean, you can see how hard it is when you look across the culture right now. Like we pond skip from one crisis to the next. It's like Ukraine, Israel, pandemic. It's like one after the next. The culture is just going from crisis to crisis to crisis. And if we can't break free of that and the drama we create in our own lives, then we're just going to be victim to it. And so, yeah. How do we slow down? It's radical practice. It's like radical practice to say, I'm going to take 25 minutes and I'm not going to do a thing first thing every morning. It's radical practice to say, instead of just filling my weekend full of things to do, I'm actually just going to go sit in the forest and ask myself, where am I? And does this feel right? Like that is radical practice.
Tell us a little bit more about that journey once you recognized after, let's say, the closing of your first marriage, when you recognized this isn't really working anymore. I'm wondering, what did that process of grieving look like for you? And then as well, the
Yeah.
preparation towards truly creating the relationship that you really desire.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. So actually before the divorce, what happened was I learned meditation and I learned how to get out into nature and actually be with the stillness of life rather than just the emotionality of it. And so in the lead up to my divorce, that was when I really realized, wow, like the emotional conditions of my life are wrong and I'm not receiving the kind of love that I deserve. And so it was that really started it. And that's when I started to learn love and like understand like what are needs, what are the like love languages, what are the things that I would like to feel in my relationship. And when I realized I didn't trust my ex-wife to fulfill that at the deepest level, I filed for divorce. And so what I did, because I was also really curious about grief and how to move through divorce, I constructed an incredible pathway to move from divorce to an empowered state of dating for the sake of deep love. And what it looked like was I gave myself a period of time. I basically said, something between 6 months and a year. And I really wanted to focus on just really grieving, like feeling the pain, feeling the sadness, feeling the heartbreak, like all the things that are coming through. Grief is a wild moment. It's kind of like being dropped in the middle of a wild ocean and you don't know what the hell's going on. And you're just like, I don't even know where I'm going and I don't have a sail. That's what grief is like. And so basically I just said, instead of trying to push myself through grief, I'm just going to give myself space and time. So I did. And I got a little bit of support. I hired a therapist at the time and I was kind of like, can you help me navigate this? And she was like, well, here's the process of grief. And I was like, okay, great. So I fired her immediately and I just was like, I'm going to figure it out. So I read some books on grief and I just gave myself time and I didn't make myself wrong. Like I didn't make myself wrong for feeling like I was having an identity crisis. I didn't make myself wrong for feeling like I was like, I had fucked my whole life up. I didn't make any stories out of that period. I just go, like, I just sat in that space of, I'm completely fucked. And it's Tuesday. It's like, okay, great. So now what am I going to do? And so after that period of grief, I realized one of the big missing pieces in my life was actual joy, play, and like, happiness. And so I thought, okay, what can I do that really will shake me open and inspire me? And, um, you know, to each their own in terms of your path back to joy. What I did was I went to Burning Man a couple times. I built some art at some big burns regionally. And I threw myself fully into just like building gigantic playgrounds for adults. Like that was basically what I was doing. And it really allowed me to just have these experiences at pretty extreme environmental spaces where I was just like on purpose doing a thing for a period of time, having a blast. And I very specifically remember like 2 a.m. one morning, I was like hanging on to a bumblebee that was like blasting, crazy funk music and like blowing fire. And I just remember being like, wow, this is joy. And like this little kid on a bike drove by and I was like, how did we lose joy? And so that was step one was grief. Step two was reclaiming like a vitality and resilience in life. And once I was living from that place of joy, then I thought, all right, I'm ready to find love. And so I created an impeccable structure for dating. I knew that the dating process was not going to be simple or easy, and that it might just be a thing that I have to just lean into. I dated 20 people, first dates, over the course of a year. 4 of them I dated for a little longer than first date, up to 4 to 6 weeks. But I had a limit. Like if I was not a hell yes after 5 weeks or so, then I would close it down. And there's reasons for all of this, but I don't want to get into it now. But yeah, and I got to the end of a year of dating and I was like, yeah, I haven't found her yet. So I was going to take another 6 months off and maybe just travel or do something else for a minute. And she popped up. I was getting off the sites, the OkCupid, Bumble, and Tinder, and she popped up and I was like, huh, I'll give this one like 12 hours. And by the next morning, we were in a conversation. 2 days later, we met. And I knew that night that I had found my wife. And we've been married for like 6 or 7 years or something, 6 years.
One of the things that I've heard you speak of is that relationship is really about alignment and choosing. And it seems like that was
Oh, yeah.
one of the biggest things that you really dove into when you started diving into the dating realm. So diving a little bit more deeply into this conversation around dating and, when we're as well speaking to any of the listeners who may be more curious around how to date, let's say, more consciously, so they can really consciously, let's say, bring somebody in who they would really, let's say, want to build a life with. What would you tell
Yeah.
that individual and how would you support them on that process?
Yeah. Well, the first thing when working with anybody that's trying to figure out how to date, the first thing, forget the other person. The first thing you do is you look at all the ways you didn't show up well in relationship, all the ways you failed to lead beautifully in relationship or create love or create intimacy in relationship. And you really
Why
get
is that
clear on
important, Max?
where, because the thing is, if we don't get conscious around how we have not created the life that we want with all our past partners, we're going to continue to not create the life we want with our future partners. So it's radical self-responsibility first. How did I not create the quality and conditions that I desire in my past relationships? That's step one. So step two would be, what is that I want in relationship? How do I create that in relationship? And what kind of person do I need to attract that can also do that in relationship? Do you see? You see how important it is to bring consciousness around what didn't work, so that we can then go, okay, how am I going to make that work? And what kind of person do I need that will make that work with me? So that's the 100%. Like, the starting piece is not about anybody else. It's actually about the self. Where have I fallen short in cultivating the relationship of my dreams?
Yep.
Okay. And then, so once you have that information and you're clear on your love languages, you're clear on what you desire and want in relationship, then you look outward and you say, okay, I'm looking for a partner that can meet me at that. And for me, what I was looking for was someone that was, joy, that had access to joy and resilience. Like, that was like, yeah, I'm here for life. I love life. Life's good. Like, I was looking for someone with that kind of energy. I was looking for someone that had a fiery, passionate, capacity in intimacy and sex. And I was also looking for someone that I could really trust to go the distance as, the mother of my children, and someone that I could create a family with, because I don't want to play this game of just dating for the rest of my life. I don't want to do shallow relationships. I want to find someone that I can go into the depths of life with, and someone that I trust that when things get difficult, we're going to fix it. We're going to find a way through it. We're going to come back to love. Like, I want someone that I can really do life in all its expressions with and feel safe in that relationship, because I know that she is capable. And so I really dated for that. I dated for that. And there were certain things that I was just a non-negotiable no to. And as those things emerged in the dating space, I was just like, cool, thank you for your time. It's not what I'm looking for. And I just moved on, because I was looking for that fuck yes. And I was looking for that woman that was just like, I'm here to love, and I'm here to create love, and I'm here to just do life. And when I found Kelly, my wife's name is Kelly, I just knew it. I knew it the night I met her. And I was like, all right, here we go. Easy.
What helped you come from that conviction and really as well allow yourself to say no in those moments when you may have not seen it initially? Because one of the things that I often as well observe, especially in the realms of dating, is that we create all these stories around, yeah, okay, maybe in a few months' time, things will look differently, or maybe we're going to work towards that thing that it is that I'm desiring. So I'm noticing that in many ways, I'm going to say people downplay their desires, especially in the realms of dating. But it seems like you were very convinced of what you wanted, and you were willing to let something go if it was not in alignment.
Yeah. I mean, at a core level, the thing that I knew I needed was I needed a partner who could rise above her own bullshit and be a yes to life and creating together. That was like foundationally the thing. And the reason I was so sure in my convictions, I had just spent 9 years in a marriage with someone that had a mental illness. And it was like, I could see just how much these, like, whether it's depression, anxiety, or I don't want to get into her thing. It was pretty extreme, but like, I just realized mental capacity and the capability to be healthy of the mind is everything. And if we're trying to create a beautiful relationship with someone that's just like chronically depressed or like, has terrible emotional handling, good luck. Good luck. Like, I just was like, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to date people that are depressed, anxious. Like, anxious is a big spectrum, but like, I want to find someone that can actually show up as like life,
Yeah.
Think about it. If you were playing tennis, I don't know what you play for sports. I don't really play tennis, but it's a good visual. You need someone that's going to be on the court with their racket. Like, you hit the ball, they hit the ball. Like, that's life, right? You don't want someone that's like confused about where to stand or how to hold the racket, or like, I don't like the sun. You know what I mean? Like, you really need someone that's like, I'm here to play the game. And we live in a world where there's so much delusion, so much mental illness, so much lack of self-stewardship. And that's the big thing. I'll just tell you right here. The difference is there are a very small number of people who can actually show up and do right by life. The majority of people can't. I dated from that place. I just recognized it's a numbers game. Like, I'm looking for the 1%.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I've heard you speak of is this idea of fierce honesty, like really coming from this position of being honest around what it is that you are looking for and really, yeah, I guess as well, receiving whatever impact that you may get, from an individual. I'm curious to hear why you see honesty as so important, because I see as well there can be a lot of resistance around, truly owning that, and I guess as well fearing what that response may be from the other individual.
Yeah. Well, I was kind in like when I was dating. If somebody wasn't my partner, I was kind in the way that I expressed that, and I often didn't tell them the reason why because I don't want people. I didn't want to like, oh, you're depressed and I wouldn't want to be with you. Like
Sure.
it's a pretty terrible thing to say, right? And so radical honesty for me is just knowing my truth and operating from that place. And when I ended some of these relationships or these, the people that I dated more than a couple of weeks, I just said, I really appreciate the time we've spent together, and this isn't what I'm looking for. But I hope you find what you're looking for, and thank you for the time together. And I just kind of left it at that. And if anyone, there was one woman who asked me because she wanted to know, like, what is it? What is the thing? And I was honest with her. I said, you kind of have this baseline depression and just like, this way of showing up that I don't really have faith that we can meet at the same energetic level. And she understood. She understood because she was kind of self-aware enough to know, like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And I don't really want to tell people that kind of stuff, but she asked.
Sure. Curious to hear, what are some of the main challenges that you see among people who, let's say, go into the dating realm?
The main challenge would be confusion. You're not aware of what the energetic texture is that you're looking for. And so you're kind of dating from this place of like, I just need to find someone that feels good. And chemistry is cheap. Chemistry is cheap. And also chemistry is based on things we believe without it being true or just performative energy. And so we have to get beyond chemistry and we have to get to what is the energetic texture of a partner that I really need to create the kind of life I'm here to create. And when I say energetic texture, I mean, like, there's a couple different textures of, let's just talk about women, right? Like, there's like fiery and passionate and very sexually provocative. There's like, resilient and devotional to God. There's like, there's super soft and subtle and cerebral, like, think a librarian. Like, there's all these different kind of textures within the feminine. And what's the texture that's going to match me at my energetic texture so that when we come together in relationship, it becomes a fuck yes. And so that's really, it's hard to really get into this, but I think people can understand it. I mean, there's different textures among the masculine too. Like there's like the boss CEO guy in a suit. There's like the guy on a motorcycle with a leather jacket. And like, these are kind of archetype energies, but one guy doesn't give a fuck. One guy cares almost too much. Like everything's got to be perfect. Like there's different kind of energies of people. And you have to understand, like, what is the energy habitually that I've been attracted to and why? And two, what is the energy that I'm actually here to create with?
As we close out 2024, I want to take this brief moment to express my deepest gratitude for your support of this podcast. It's truly been incredible for me to watch the growth, reach more listeners, and have such impactful conversations with incredible guests. Being a very active podcast listener myself, I recognize that our time and attention is simply so valuable, and I really don't take it for granted that you're choosing this podcast among the many other incredible shows out there. This is why I'm so committed to making these conversations valuable, informative, and insightful, hopefully supporting you in the realms of men's development, emotional resilience, self-leadership, and relationships. If you're someone who's listening to this and have been receiving consistent value from this podcast, my sole ask is that you support the show by subscribing to it, ensuring that you never miss a new episode. If our conversations have ever brought you value, leaving a 5-star rating on Spotify and a review on Apple really does make a huge difference. I really can't emphasize enough that it helps more people discover this content and feel inspired, but it also plays a key role in helping me bring on new and exciting guests. And if today's episode resonated with you, my invitation to you is to share with someone who needs to hear it. Your support is what fuels this movement and keeps it growing. Let's keep building it together. And now, let's get back to our show. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you've taken some conscious time where you were not dating at all, and you were on a so-called feminine cleanse, where you were cutting yourself off from any form of external feminine expression. I'm curious to hear, what would you say to men who are listening, and what is the value of that, and why is that important when we want to, let's say, step into a deeper expression of what it is that we really want in relationship and love?
Yeah. It's incredibly important. So just to give your listeners a sense of what is a feminine cleanse would be you just completely stop engaging with or taking from the feminine. So you stop dating, you stop trying to create intimacy and sex. And then when you stop all that, you start to pay attention to all the ways you create energy with women. Women at a checkout counter, women walking down the street, women online, women in their Instagram feeds or on their comments. Like, once we start to get really, really conscious about the ways we're creating energy with the feminine, we start to realize how leaky we are, first of all, which is a huge detriment to creating deep relationship. But the second thing is we look at how, like, we can see how needy we are, and we're fulfilling these needs in sort of vampiric ways that are not really consensual. And what's interesting is I didn't even know this was a thing. I did it kind of messily, but I did it for a good 5 months during my grief period. And I just was like, I recognized how much engaging with the feminine was taking me out of the felt experience of grief. And so that's sort of how I framed it. I learned about feminine cleanse a couple years later, the idea of a feminine cleanse. And, there's also the no man diet. This woman, Kendra Kunov, runs a no man diet process and program. But anyway, yeah, this idea of disengaging from the gender that we're attracted to, the orientation we're attracted to, like by disengaging from it, then we get to really go like, wow, look at all the ways I'm constantly taking from it or creating like unconsciously. And when we clean that up, we can be much more integral in how we create connection, love, and intimacy.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, there was a time a few years ago where as well I stepped into a 6-month container for myself where I consciously cut myself off from any feminine expression. And it was really profound for me.
Good for you.
Yeah, it was definitely one of the best things, one of the best decisions I ever made, as well as very conscious as well in terms of how I was expressing my sexual energy, and spending as well a number of time, number of those months as well celibate. So that, I must say, was a really profound transformative journey for me in many ways, because I came to recognize how I was really adapting myself, how I was constantly attempting to coerce and to appease to the other individual. And ultimately, it was still based on a lot of the wounding that I experienced, ultimately from childhood, where I was still trying to gain or acquire love. And in so many ways, I would really fall into, let's say, engagements or interactions with individuals who I didn't even want to connect with, who I wasn't even interested in at its depth, but it was more coming from this deep desire of just wanting to experience deeper love.
Well, I mean, it's really simple. Like any man knows this. If you see a woman smile at you, it like feels good in your body. I mean, you might not be aware of it, but like it feels good when you see a woman smiling at you, right? And so we might go through life creating these moments where like someone laughs or someone smiles or someone just like, says hi with a bit of a smile. Like we create these moments because it ultimately is nourishing a part of us that wants to feel a better experience of life. And I mean, that's the thing is we do this unconsciously, but like flirtation is an energetic game. When we flirt and they respond, it's like exciting. It gets us like lit up. And that lit upness is the thing of life that if we are not doing this consciously, we're doing it unconsciously. And, every man that I've done cleanses with or that I've held through cleanses, like they're shocked by week 3 or 4, just how much they're like just taking from the world, checkout counters, baristas at coffee shops, the chick in the yoga clothes, like the person, whatever. I don't want to get into all the details, but like, it's amazing how much we're just constantly creating energy with women as men and the other way around. If a woman's listening, with men, but like, it's crazy how much we're creating energy to fulfill a part of us that just wants to have a better felt experience of the moment.
One of the things that you suggested at the beginning of our conversation is what I'll describe as, cleaning up one's past. What does that look like? And also, what are the aspects that one should consider, in terms of cleaning up one's past, cleaning up, particular experiences that may be leaking into any new interactions?
Any emotional experience you've had in your life, all the way back to childhood, including experiences with your parents, those things live inside you. Any emotional experience you've had with exes, those things live inside you. So until you reconcile energetically those relationships, any bitterness, any resentment, any unhealed wounds, until you reconcile that stuff, you're carrying that backpack of wounding as you enter your next space. And then your partner's going to have to deal with it. And so one of the most important things here is, how do I reconcile my past? Like, how do I reconcile with my exes that I didn't lead well, that I dropped poorly, that I'm, like, I don't want to speak to anybody's experiences, but like there's all sorts of stuff we've done that wasn't really that great in past relationships. How do we clean it up? And it's really important. This idea of becoming clean as a vessel. During our human experience, we kind of dirty our vessel up quite a bit throughout our life. And if we don't clean and polish that off, like we can't create from the highest possibility. What I do often with people, the Carlos Castaneda lineage, there's this idea of reconciliation where you sort of karmically flip and make right any wrong that was done in the past. And so there's this kind of way that you can reconcile. You don't have to do it with your exes, but there's this idea where I talked about this idea of taking responsibility of where we didn't show up well. It's like that. You just take real responsibility over where I didn't lead my partner well. And you can offer it as a prayer. You can offer it as a ritual. My mom passed away when I was young, but I even did a reconciliation with my mom. And I really looked at like, where did I not hold her well in the final years of her life? Granted, I was 15. So, I mean, I'm not putting too much responsibility on my holding, but I mean, still. And I just held a ritual, and I wrote an inventory of it, and I lit it on fire and dropped the ashes into a river. And so with another one of my exes, I actually sent them a letter and just said like, hey, here's the ways I didn't hold you. And so instead of sitting in this place of blaming her or blaming the feminine for not loving me, I just took responsibility and I just kind of sent it off. And by doing that, what you're doing is you're cleaning up your own hooks, because instead of being like, wow, she fucked my life up, you're going, okay, I see how I contributed to the downfall of that relationship. My bad. Sorry about that. It's just responsibility. It's deepening the ownership of the cultures we've created in relationship. Yeah. And the last thing is, it's just like, there's an energetic pull. If we haven't cleaned up things that have happened in our past, we're just like, they're always there. It's like it pulls on your consciousness because it's there. Like any man who's ever done wrong in the world, you think about it. I know you do. I do too. We all do. We think about the things we didn't do right, things we could have done better, and they kind of gnaw at us. And if we're holding that in relationships, like it's keeping us it's almost like it's keeping us in the past relationship while we're trying to create a new one.
One of the things that was present for me a few years ago, when at the same time when I was as well doing that feminine cleanse, I came out of a breakup and I noticed how there was a lot of resentment that I had towards my ex-partner. And it was very apparent for me, let's say, all the ways that I felt like she fell short. And at that time, I came to recognize I had no clue, what it's like to really do relationship well. And that was really the time as well where I, let's say, dove more deeply into the teachings of David Data, but as well John Wineland. And it really, I guess, opened up my awareness to, oh, wow, how may I have contributed to the experience that we had? And that simple question just brought so much awareness to, sure, she may have done her own thing. And that's, it's valid, if there's upset about that. But at the same time, where did I contribute? Where did I co-create, the dysfunction that we, let's say, had? And that simple awareness and the willingness as well for me to really dive into that and as well do the work that allowed me to, let's say, alchemize it. It really allowed me to, let's say, bring a new caliber of types of interactions and relationships as well into my future. And it was really, I'm going to say that was definitely a turning point for me, to stop blaming the other person, but really ask myself, well, how did I really contribute to this experience?
For anyone listening, the most important thing you should hear is if you blame anyone for anything, you're giving them power over you.
Sure.
And you're allowing them to continue to control the outcome of your life. When we blame, what we say is, I wasn't able to take responsibility over my needs.
Sure.
That's what blame is. It's saying they did wrong by me. But the missing piece is I did wrong by me. Does that make sense? And by her. So yeah, we have to take responsibility if we want to grow, if we want to be men of integrity and empowerment. It's just a non-negotiable. Yeah. And I would actually argue that most people are unwilling to do that because it's easier to swim in the victim space where it's like, listen, here's the thing. As soon as you take responsibility, now it's all on you. And it's kind of a pain in the ass. It's like, fuck, I got to create everything I want in life. It sucks. But when we can go, life's not working for me, it's like, well, now you don't have to take action. So you can get away with less by staying a victim.
I would like to hear a little bit more about what leadership looks like in the relational front. How would you describe it? Especially as a, I'm going to say, masculine being.
Yeah. Leadership is about creating space for the co-creation of love. It's about saying, what do you want in this relationship? What do you need in this relationship? And it's about saying, what do I need? What do I want? And it's about bringing that into the space. It's about saying, how are you? How are you doing? How do you feel? It's about creating the container where you're just like, okay, this is my realm. This is my kingdom. Are all the walls strong? Is everybody in the walls happy? Like, is this world working? Leadership is operating from that place. In the men's workspace, we often talk about these archetypes like prince and king. You're a king when you actually operate from, how's my village? How's my people? And really operating from their wellness first. I mean, you've got to be empowered and okay. But like, what I'm saying is like, this idea, like women and children first. Real leadership is looking at, is my wife good? Are my kids good? Am I good? Are we good? Like, that's leadership, that awareness. And most men come in and they're just like, I don't know what's going on in my life. And it's like, well, how do you look at it? It's very self-oriented. That's the prince. If you want to move into leadership, kingship, it's about, where are we at?
I'm wanting to, I guess, understand a little bit more around where the challenges occur that leads to, I guess, a lot of men not stepping into leadership. Is it really more the like self-referential thoughts, the focus towards self?
I mean, it's almost always this. Something's not working. And then we go into the pity party of like, I'm not getting what I want in relationship. And then there's this other piece where they actually like don't know how to get what they want. They don't know how to create a culture where that need is fulfilled. And so we get into this trap where we're like, I don't know how to make this work. Most people aren't saying it that way. Most people are saying like, she's an asshole, or this sucks, or I can't figure this out, or like, what the fuck
Yeah.
do I do about all this emotions that's coming at me, all the emotions that are coming at me? There's a million ways this turns up, but leadership is taking responsibility over like, I need to learn how to do this well. You talked about David Data and John Wineland. They both have books that really kind of shine a light on what is masculine leadership in a relationship. And it's not that all men have to lead that way. Like, anyone that's more masculine in the relationship, you're going to want to lead. You're going to want to create containment. And by creating containment in relationship, we create safety. By creating safety in relationship, things can blossom, they can bloom. Leadership is really about looking at, does everybody feel good and feel safe? And the traps are when we don't feel empowered to do that. So if we're not getting our needs met and we get into this fucking wishy-washy space of like, it's not working for me, which trust me, I do too. Like this happens to me. The recovery is, okay, where am I responsible for creating the thing that needs to happen here? For myself or for her, if her needs aren't being met, or for my kids, if their needs aren't being met, Leadership is really just taking full responsibility for everything. I have a flag in my office window. It's right here behind my computer. It says, expect to self-rescue. I got this flag during the pandemic and everything was crazy. And I was just like, what the hell are we doing here? And I was starting a new business and I was just like, man. And I really realized like, I need to be reminded every single day that it's up to me, and it's up to me to lead this thing. I'm the captain of this ship. If I don't captain, no one else is going to, or no one else is going to know to. Like it's critical. And so expect to self-rescue. It's been a guiding light for the past 5 years in my practice, in the way that I look at life. It's up to me. And the more men that get on that train, the more I just hear from men that are like, wow, that was the thing that changed my life. Just realizing like, I can't wait for anybody else to do anything for me. It's on me to do it. And if I don't, it won't happen.
Yeah. And just what I'm reminded by is just the initial words with which we started the conversation, where you spoke of the fact that when we don't step into, like, let's say, relational leadership, the impact that that has on our lives, in terms of, let's say, when there is dysfunction in the relationship, or when there's challenges in the relationship, it ultimately impacts every other area as well of our lives. So I think it also just speaks to the importance, and as well I'm going to say, return of investment for a man to really step into making this area of their lives a priority, and really making as well the well-being of their partner, of their children, really a priority, because they'll benefit from it as well.
If your relationship's fucked or your kids are unhealthy, it's going to take all of your consciousness. And so let's say you're trying to create something powerful in the world. I work with a lot of business leaders, people that lead companies. You show up on Monday to go lead your company, but all you can think about is how fucked up your weekend was because your kids are out of control and like your wife hates you. Like, it's impossible to operate well in the world, creatively, inspired, happy. It's impossible to operate that way if our relationships aren't dialed in. And learning how to dial in a relationship isn't that difficult. It's just about looking at her needs as equally valued, looking at her wants as equally valued, looking at your own needs and wants as valued, and creating toward the fulfillment of those things. It's like it's actually that simple. The thing is, we all resist taking responsibility because we don't know how to do it. Well, we can learn. I teach men. Men are learning all over the world how to fulfill the needs of the feminine and how to look at their own needs and ask for those to be fulfilled. So that's the turning point once you take responsibility.
You support your, let's say, masculine practitioners to really, let's say, widen their capacity to be with emotion. Yes. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about that and how we step into that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So a lot of us have a very fragile nervous system capacity and emotional capacity. And what that would look like to any listener is if something emotional happens at you, she's annoyed, she's irritated, she's frustrated. If you go into defense, you hunker down around your chest and you go like, no, that's not right. Let me logically tell you why that's wrong. If you go into that state, that's a lack of your nervous system's capacity to actually listen and hear. To expand your capacity, what it actually looks like is something can be happening in life. And instead of reacting to it, you can go, wow, something's happening in life. Like you're actually in a place of awareness rather than reaction. And when you can do that, you can operate from a deeper place of leadership, since we're talking about it. Wow, she's really frustrated. What do you need? What do you need me to hear? What am I missing here? What can we do about it? You know, those are the questions you can ask when you can be with what is happening in life. And it's interesting because I teach this really simply, which is that we have to be able to breathe and feel the ground when things are elevating. You know, when our emotions are elevating and we're getting into a reactive state, we can feel it. You can feel it in your chest. It tightens. You can feel it in your face. If you're angry, you know, it gets hot. Our fingers and fists will clench. You know, there's things that we can feel. So when we notice that happening in our body, how do we resource ourselves back to, no, I'm okay. I'm safe. I can hear this. So learning how to do that, we do this in actual practice. Like I will have men sit in front of each other and breathe. And then I'll have a man like make a fucking expression. And I'll have the second guy like really notice what just happened in your body. Notice what just happened in your nervous system, around your heart, around your chest, around your face, you know? And like when people begin to get awareness of the physical expression of emotions, I mean, that's night and day difference, because all of a sudden they go, holy shit, I can feel my emotions actually. Yeah, you can. And you just don't know what they are. You know, most men that say, I can't feel my emotions, they can, and they just don't know what's happening and they're not aware that it's happening. And as soon as you teach a man, like that's what fear feels like, that's what anger feels like, that's what sadness feels like, all of a sudden it's like, okay, now I know how to work with this. And it's practice, lifelong practice. I've been doing this practice for, 9-10 years. I started meditating 2015, so 9 years ago. And we never get perfect at it. We'll always react and respond, but we can get better at how we do, and we can get really good at repairing afterwards, staying out of those traps of anxious or avoidant and just coming back to like, all right, we mucked that one up. Let's try that again.
Yeah, I love how when you simply just provided the context for breath and grounding oneself, I noticed as well how my spine was straightening, how my breath was deepening in that moment, how I was bringing attention towards my feet. And it's just that simple context, and I've been practicing it a lot, but just bringing it here and there into our awareness, and if we practice that regularly and consistently, how much of a difference that can really make.
Yeah, for anyone that's listening, if you sit at a desk, I'll just give you this tip because it's really an important one. So my chair is a wooden chair that does not have wheels on the bottom. So when I'm sitting in my chair is stable and my feet are on the ground. A lot of us are sitting in these roller chairs that are really comfortable and we slouch in them. Change the way you live, like change the way you sit, change the way that you stand, change the way that you like are seated in your most common positions so that you can be seated in a position that's more grounded. My feet are on the ground. I'm on a wooden chair that is not moving. I mean, it's kind of wobbly. It's a pretty cheap chair, but the fact is it's not wobbling and moving, and it's not like a cozy couch. It's just a wooden chair. And it's important because when I sit here and I'm working, yeah, like you said, feet on the ground, breath in the belly, present with the person in front of me and the dog that's now barking outside.
This idea of repair, I would like to speak a little bit about that, and how do we repair?
Yeah. First of all, every one of us, we're going to muck it up throughout the rest of our lives. We're going to make messes. We're going to get into like fights with our partners. We're going to say the wrong thing to our kids. Can't avoid it. We're humans. So To create safety, we have to have a habit of repair. We have to be so committed to repair that as soon as we can, we come back to it and we do that. We repair. And when we start practicing repair, it actually can happen almost immediately. Like I actually, when I feel myself getting into a conflict, I'm also thinking like, well, I'm going to repair this if I don't get it right now. So I might as well try to get it right. So as we become better at repair, it starts to come into the moment of conflict and go, well, I have choices with how I hold this. I don't always get that right, but I'm just saying. Repair is great. So creating a culture of repair would be like anytime I get into a conflict with my partner, within a certain period of time, I come back and I resolve it and we come back to connection. A lot of people permiss this thing where it's like, I'm just going to go into my resentments and my frustrations for as long as I want until I feel ready. That's garbage. That's selfish, and that's ultimately going to harm the relationship. If you want to create safety in relationship, give yourself 48 hours max for the worst of them. Like 48 hours max. Try to be within an hour, try to be within 6 hours, try to be with like the next morning. And what repair looks like is it's going, baby, I'm sorry that we got into that thing last night. I'm sorry that we like got really kinked up on something. And I'm sorry I said what I said. You know, it's about owning the thing that shouldn't have happened, first of all. And then it's about, what do I need to hear that I missed last night? Or can I express to you what I need you to hear that I think we missed last night? And can we just kind of create space around it? And for people that are really wily emotionally, you might want to bring in intentional dialogue. So there's the imago dialogue. That's like really a brilliant way of constructing the back and forth conversation so that people stay within the felt experience of the topic that was brought up. A lot of what we do is like, someone will say like, this is what I need more of. It's like, well, for me to do that, I need more of this. And now we're just talking about two different topics and we're not actually deepening around the original expression. So repair, getting good at repair is staying really tethered to the original charge, the original issue, and resolving that through empathy, understanding, awareness, and a commitment to action.
I actually had just recently I had GS Youngblood on the podcast as well,
Oh,
and we spoke about
awesome.
this idea. Yeah, it was a great conversation, and
GS is great. He's cool.
totally. Yeah, we dove into a lot of the as well challenges that occur for a lot of men as well in the realms of conflict, and we spoke about this idea where a lot of the conflicts that occur like
Mhm.
are prioritized more in the informational realms, and we don't actually really dive more into, I'm going to say, the emotions that are underneath it. Can you speak a little bit more about that and why it is so important just to really focus on that, focus on the emotions and the needs versus, let's say, the things that are actually being said?
Yeah. So in life, most of our emotional responses are around safety and a lack of safety. Something is triggering our felt sense of safety. But what we go to is, this thing you did was fucked, right? And it's actually not about the thing you did. It's about, there's a safety issue. And when I'm coaching people through conflict, I'm always like, okay, what's the underlying issue? What you're asking about. Yeah, it's like the thing that's underneath the thing. You can't repair a problem by looking at the fruits of the problem. You can only repair a problem by looking at what is the deepest part of the problem. Does that make sense? When we have these energetic conflicts that occur in relationship, it's usually not about the conflict. Like, I was working with a client recently and he didn't call her at the time. He said he was going to call her after work and she got all upset. And then he was like, what the hell? Like, I need some flexibility. Like, life happens. And I'm like, yeah. But when you set an expectation, she was expecting it. And when that didn't happen, she felt unsafe. And in her unsafety, she's now thrashing at you because you didn't do what you said you were going to do. And what you might need to do is say, I need some flexibility. I'll call you between 5 and 8 rather than I'll call you at 5. And he was like, yeah, I guess that's true. He set an expectation. He didn't fulfill it. She felt unsafe. Now he's pissed about feeling controlled by her needs to know exactly when he's going to get out of work. And it's like, bro, let's get out of all that. It's like she just had a safety issue pop up and you can set a different expectation so that she can lean into a little more spaciousness around your timing.
How would you help a man like really recognize what's underneath the surface? How would you help him recognize, oh, she actually felt unsafe in that moment versus not getting wrapped up in the content of the conversation?
So you would just say, okay, so when this thing happened that you're saying happened, like instead of going like that didn't happen, which is the opposite of functional. So when this thing actually happened, what did you feel? Like, what did that make you feel? Like, that's the question you ask. When you were upset about that, what were you actually feeling? And then like, okay. And what were you feeling beneath that feeling?
Yeah.
So like, I don't know, let's just do like, we'll do a hypothetical around a guy that's talking to some other woman. So like when I was talking to some other woman and you got pissed, like what did that make you feel? And she's like, I felt enraged by the fact that you were talking to some other woman and she's like attractive and it made me feel like nervous or whatever. And I was like, okay, so what's underneath that? Oh, fear. fear that you're going to lose me to this other woman. Okay. Like from that place, now I can affirm the problem. The problem
Yeah.
is she feels afraid because I talked to some other woman who was like attractive. Like this is a hypothetical. I'm just trying to break it down really simply.
Sure.
And then so you would serve it by going like, baby, I love you. I'm sorry. I'll be more careful around my energy with other women. Like, I love you. I'm here for it. Because you're serving the fear, not the actual thing that happened.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because really what happened might be like minimal, but the way she felt it was deeply something. And so you have to work at that depth. So I hope I'm teaching this well. But the point is, but beneath all expressions that are discordant, there is a deep something that is being triggered and we have to serve that thing.
Yeah. And what I'm really hearing is that you're really bringing curiosity and a level of openness to wanting to as well understand the person and really wanting to, let's say hear, see, and recognize the person, which is ultimately that's what the individual usually wants, especially a woman in those moments. Like she wants to be seen, she wants to be felt in that experience of what is going on for her. And as soon as we start arguing about, oh, I didn't try to do that and all that crap.
Yeah. You're wrong for feeling the way you feel.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a losing path every single time, trying to make her wrong for what she's felt. It's not that. It's just like, what is she feeling? Make her feelings right and serve those feelings, and you will have more success in relationship than always trying to be like, no, that's not what's happening.
For sure. I mean, one of the things that I've come to really as well recognize for myself, or at least I'm recognizing it more and more right now, conflicts will always occur. But I think for me, what's really changing is I'm going to say duration until repair actually happens. And that's really, I think, what I'm striving as well for myself, just to as well shorten the gap until repair actually happens. And really, I guess, being a stand for love, a stand for, finding way back to connection in those moments when that disrupt actually occurs.
You're 100% on the gap. And it's really important that people understand this. When you start to learn conscious repair techniques, the gap between conflict and repair gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And sometimes, like I said earlier in this conversation, sometimes because you're so aware that you're going to repair this, you might actually go, I'm not going to say the thing that I want to say right now because I'm going to have to repair that tomorrow. Let me actually get right to the underlying thing that I'm going to miss if I say that thing. Like that will happen in a conflict if we're resourced enough. And also, we'll make mistakes. We'll muck it up. We'll make messes. That's always going to happen. So shrink the time back to repair. And if you get consistent with repair, that's actually how she will feel safe. Because it's not that you're like sometimes emotionally volatile. It's that you just don't clean it up and you don't take responsibility over it, or you gaslight her and make her wrong for it. And that's the thing that she feels is unsafe because you're actually not living with reality. You're not safe. And so being a man of repair, I mean, my wife can weather my grumpiness, my irritability, my occasional just bullshit. She can weather it really well. And she can weather it even better because she knows that after it happens, we're going to clean it up and I'm going to take responsibility for what I need to take responsibility for. And then we can move on. And then we don't hold resentments. Don't hold resentments. Resentments are selfish and they are going to kill your relationship. I have been with my wife for 6 years. I have no stories around who she is or what she's done in the relationship. I just believe she's an incredible woman and I'm here to love her. No resentments makes it easier for me to just be in that place of a higher possibility and ideal within love.
From what I heard you share, it seems that the building of resentments or the building of like stories and thoughts about our partners is really coming when we don't actually do the repair soon enough. And it really is the fertile ground for things to actually start building up and occurring. And then we have all these stories and then mistrust happens and then we distance ourselves. And that's really where then we operate from this place of needing to protect ourselves and then we're not showing up with an open heart and all these complications occur.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, resentments are the function of being selfish and ignorant of our own humility in life. When I grant my partner her beingness in her whole expression, including her messiness, it comes from the place of knowing that I too am messy. And when we can just be that way, when we can have humility around it, we're less likely to create resentments. I mean, if there is something that has been a habitual pattern in relationship that needs to be sorted out, that's different. And that could be a true thing. But I think the majority of people are just making up stories about their partners like, she doesn't ever do this thing or he doesn't ever do this thing, blah, blah, blah. And it's just unmet needs that are not being shepherded consciously and responsibly by the individual. And then we blame it on our partners.
Max, I would love to pivot a little bit into the realm of men's work. I wanna hear a bit more about, from my understanding, you work with John together, and as I see it, you're kind of at the forefront in many ways of the direction that I see as well men's work going. And so I'm curious to hear, what are some of the essential keys that you see are so important in the realm of men's development?
Yeah. Let me frame it this way. Since the dawn of mankind, men have led men toward their expansion, toward becoming better men. So when you look at it through the initiatory framework, which is something I teach on, kids are kids and we let them play and we let them develop social and emotional learning skills. That's what kids do. Great. And at some point in their life, 11 to 15, depending on the culture, older men take those boys and they bring them into the forest and they basically say, like, here's what your responsibility is as a man. And for you to become a man, you need to go through this really difficult experience to prove that you're ready. And that creates this thing where it's like, oh, growth is real and I need to take responsibility over myself in a new way. That's what has happened since the dawn of mankind. And it doesn't stop there. We actually are really not speaking about the initiatory framework in any honest way, because we just go, there was one initiation where boys become men and like, that's it. It's not true. The second initiation is when men become husbands. And
Mm.
if you look at the San tribe, which is in Africa, which we all genetically have some relationship to from the beginning of mankind, they've had marriage ceremony in their process of cultural traditions for like 500,000 years. I mean, the entire spoken history of their, so this idea of a man and a woman coming together and creating family, that's the second initiation. And so again, that man is taken with by other men and they do a thing, we call it a bachelor party. That's like the ghost of it now, right? But like men take a man and they like say, like, now you're moving into this new station of life. And in many cultures, that's a status up leveling. Like when you're a married man, when you're a man of relationship, when you're a father, you're now, you're in a different realm. Tattoos, rings, there's all sorts of things we've done for a long time. Marriage is not a thing of religion. It's a thing of culture, and it's been around forever, and there's a reason. Healthy villages, healthy communities are built on these frameworks. And I'm not a traditionalist in any religious sense at all. I just look at the human history and I look at, what are we missing? What are we missing in this story? What men's work should be about is what it's always been about, which is we take men and people in the next station of life help pull those men into a greater, wider awareness around how to lead themselves and others in that station. Boys become men. Now you know how to show up and build your skills, like become valuable in society and learn how to relate to women. Like that's what your like prince stage should be. And then it's like, cool, when you choose your woman, now it's like, now to move into kingship, this is it. You move away from the selfish, what do I need in life? And you now go, how do I serve? These are like the stages of initiation that men need to get on. And then finally, there's a final stage of initiation, which is that when your kids are now old enough to go off and do their own thing, you're initiated into elderhood. You become an elder in any community. And that's not being held either. So we're missing all three initiations as men. Boyhood to manhood, manhood to kinghood or fatherhood, and then fatherhood to elderhood. Those are all the fucking growth moments that need to be held. And what men's work should be doing, and in some ways is doing, is it's help fostering men, at least from their childhood, even as grown men, into some degree of, okay, now I'm taking self-responsibility, which is like sort of the prince phase, young adult phase. I frame it that way because I think it's really important that we understand why we're even doing this. Men's work has come up because we lost men's work. We lost men as men,
Yeah.
becoming greater men together. That has been part of the human history since the beginning.
Mm.
And we lost it. We lost it completely. And we especially lost it as Westerners, like moving away from our villages, moving away from our cultures, crossing oceans and starting new families in a very, selfish kind of culture. Like anyone that lives in America, like it's very self-orienting. We don't really have our villages the same way, but some people do. You go to the Italians in southern Boston or the Cajuns down in Louisiana, there are people that are still kind of living these multi-generational things. And it's really important to recognize the value of that. So anyway, men's work. It's about reclaiming what we've always had as men. And it's a non-negotiable. The difference between a man who engages in men's work and surrounds himself by men who are smarter than him and that can lead him into growth, and a man who doesn't, is night and day.
What are some of the difficulties that you see among some of the men who, let's say, haven't gone through such a process, which I would say is pretty much all of us, but what are kind of like the edges that you see that they ultimately have to cross and really overcome? And what are some of like the key principles that you have been supporting, let's say, the men who come to your spaces?
Yeah, the number one problem with men that haven't come to men's workspaces is confusion. They just don't know what's going on in their life. They don't know why it's arrived at the moment that it's at. They don't know how to fix it. Like they're just confused. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to work with this. I don't know why this keeps happening. Like that's the kind of stuff when men don't surround themselves by men who are wiser than them, that's what happens. And so what happens when these men join my spaces is we just go, okay, well, here's what's up. Here's what's happening in your field. Does that make sense? Yep. Okay, cool. Here's what you can do about it. Does that make sense? Yeah, great. And it's not just that, like, I'm not trying to say there's one way to do life, but like, you know, in my circles, we hold support during the last hour or 30 minutes of every circle. And, I'll have 3 or 4 guys give support and feedback to anybody's thing. And so there are diverse possibilities with how we work with things, but it's just like, there's like a taking responsibility over your life happens when you join men's workspaces, good ones that are well led, because there's this whole thing where it's like, okay, that's your problem. What are we going to do about it? How are you going to fix it? You know, that's sort of, I guess that's the thing. You know, men's work is really about taking responsibility and holding other men to come into higher integrity and accountability in their lives.
What would you say is a, very well held, men's circle or environment for men's development? Because in, let's say, the almost 5 years now that where I've as well been, stepping into men's work, I've seen a lot of different expressions of it. A lot of it are more kind of in the realms of, sharing circles. Some are more about, let's say, expression and going into, let's say, particular emotions that they have been, accumulating and holding, for so many years. And some are more, let's say, more in the embodied realms, which I'm personally a lot more interested into now these days. And I'm wondering, what would you say are some of the essential elements to really, let's say, support individuals to really come a lot more integrated, to really, I'm going to say, overcome a lot of that confusion and really come from that position of depth and clarity and knowing what they want and really as well going after it.
Yeah. Well, I think that all men need to have a handle on mindfulness. You know, it's mental health, physical health, spiritual health, relational health, and purpose. Like there's some core things that men need to have a handle on. And so when you're looking at men's workspaces, like here's the thing I always tell people. Join a men's workspace where you trust the leader or leadership of that space to move you toward your growth in some realm, whether it's like financial empowerment, relational empowerment, personal empowerment, like whatever. Like choose a space where you're like, I see what that guy's doing or those people are doing, and I want more of that in my life. And also you want to know if they're actually doing it. There's a lot of kind of like performers that are performing men's work and running men's workspaces. You want to know, like, does this man actually have what I want? I would only really take feedback from a man who I would only take relational feedback from a man who's married and has children, because I'm married and I have children. And anyone that's not married and has children really can't give me solid feedback because they don't know what it means to be fully committed, to be all in, to have children that are more important than your own emotional stuff. You know what I mean? So you want to find men that are beyond your own station in life. That's really the key. And then the second thing that I would say is men's work really is about continued work. It's not about a one-off experience. And so if you go to an immersion, great. And now what are you going to do? What are you going to do to hold you more accountable? I've run a men's circle for 10 years. I'm taking some time off from the circles at the 10-year mark just to kind of pause it because I need a break from it. But a lot of my men have been in my circle for 5-6 years. You know, they've been around for a long time. And it's like, all we're doing is we meet once a month and we just, we talk. I teach some things, we do some practice, do some support. And just that alone is changing lives. So, consistency, like that's the number one thing. Yeah, I hope I answered your question. I know I was kind of all over the place, but I think the thing that's most important that people recognize is that as men, we need men that are beyond our own station in life to help lead us toward it. And we have to choose what those things are. Like if you want to get more fit, get into a men's work group where it's all like a bunch of fit guys and they like work out, weekly, or there's an accountability thing around working out. If you want to dial in your relationships, get into a men's workspace where the man is of relationship and knows how to do sustainable relationship, If you want to just like feel your heart and get more aware of your emotions, sure, sharing circle is good, but sharing circles are kind of low on the rung of actually empowered work. Embodiment's really the key. Becoming embodied, becoming a man who's in his body and conscious and aware of his power and energy. I mean, that's really where most men should be heading, at least in terms of awareness of it.
Would you be able to share a little bit more about why embodiment is so important?
Yeah, because we're all disembodied. We're all stuck in our heads and thoughts aren't even real. Like thoughts are not real. Beliefs aren't even real. We believe things that we create from a framework that's based on our entire coping with life since our childhood. It's not real. What's real is I'm a man sitting on a chair and I'm here. I've got a wife, I've got kids, I'm on a call, I have a business. Like these are the realities of my life. And from this place of sitting on a chair, what do I need to do next to actually activate towards success in all of those realms? That's real life. What we're doing is we're spending all our time trying to hack it in our minds, and our minds are delusional. We're completely wrong about most of the things we think about. The only thing that matters is what's true, where am I, and what needs to happen. That's reality. That's embodiment. I'm here and there's energy in the field. How do I work with it? That's reality. Most people are completely manipulated. They're completely in their heads and they're completely disembodied, and you can tell.
I found my way as well very much through mindfulness and, then stepping more into yoga, and then as well other realms of embodiment through Qigong, and as well more embodied practices through masculine practices and feminine practices. I just see it as definitely something incredibly essential. And for us to,
Yes.
let's say, get disidentified with a lot of the thoughts and belief structures that may in some ways be as well dictating our lives.
For anyone that is listening that hasn't done men's work, you could pretty much join any men's work, anything, and that'll get you started. And then as you sort of get your wherewithal within the men's work space, which is very diverse, then you go, okay, where am I heading to really like compel my life forward? Napoleon Hill talked about a mastermind in the early 1900s. All that was a group of men that were sitting around trying to really dial in, like, how do I crush it in business? That's kind of a men's work thing. That one's a little more rooted in business, but I mean, that might be where you're at. Like, where do I find a mastermind around business? I know a guy in Arkansas that runs a container that's about really crushing business and fitness. It's like fitness and business is his thing. And he's great. And then, John is relational intimacy and men's work. The Sacred Sons do the big thing that they do. Connor Beaton does stuff. There's men all over the place that are doing men's work. So you just really want to choose something that feels right energetically for you. Jump in, do it, and then dial it even more. Like, okay, what do I actually want to create in my life? I'm going to start a couple things over the next couple of years that are going to be one thing that's really geared toward fatherhood and how to be an awesome fucking dad, how to be an awesome husband, how to have like amazing intimacy and relationship. Like that field is really important to me because that's what I live. So I'm going to start something there. I'm going to start a mastermind around business development for men that really want to crush, at a big level financially. There's a couple things I'm creating that are niche, because it's like, if we get really niche, we can get really distilled in that space and really empowered in it. I'm also doing some really interesting stuff around ancestry and like the dawn of mankind kind of men's work experiences that are happening soon, that I can't talk about because they're fucking awesome. And I'm not going to tell anyone what's going on until it actually comes out, because it's sick.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, I think this is a really
Yeah.
good time for us as well to start winding the conversation down, wrapping up. I feel like you've already been sharing a few things as well around what it is that you're going to be offering in the future. Is there anything else that you would like to bring our listeners an awareness to? And if not, where can our listeners find you?
Well, the last thing I'll say is, for any man that's listening, you've got one life. You've got this life, and this is the life that you were given to make whatever you want to make of it. And too many of us are sitting on the sidelines waiting for it to happen, when really the call is tap in and get to work. Let's create powerful lives. We can do it. And I've seen so many men just tap in and change their lives overnight. 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, you could be living an entirely different life. It's worth doing. So if you're listening to this, tap in, join us, do the work. You will have an incredible experience of it. It will change your life. In terms of where men can find me, my name is Max Trombly. I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. My website's ashiftinbeing.com. You can pretty much just Google search me, Max Trombly. And I'm around. I'm on the internet, so it's not hard to find me. I'm down in New Orleans, Louisiana. Most of my work is on the East Coast, and then I'm doing some work in Europe coming soon.
Cool, man. Whereabouts in Europe?
I can't tell you. It's a big secret. I'll tell you what. I'm doing some really cool stuff that has to do with ancient ancestry, and in a way that no one's ever done it before. And I just don't want to talk about the details of it because I'm creating it now, but it's going to be really cool. It's definitely a different take on how we look at who we are as every one of us. Like most of the men that I know have ancestry on these lands, and we have no relationship to it. And that's really at our own detriment. Thousands and thousands and thousands of years of our ancestors drank certain waters, felt certain dirt, like they heard certain sounds as the wind went through the trees of our native lands, and we're disconnected from it, and it matters. And so that's some of the realms that I'm working in.
All right. I love that. I'll make sure as well to stay tuned on your Instagram. I'm sure that you're going to be sharing more information on that. Awesome. Well, Max, I want to close our conversation off by bringing the conversation back into play, joy, and humor,
Yeah.
because I know these
Yeah.
are things that are really important to you. And as well,
Mhm.
from the initial start of our conversation, you mentioned a part of your healing was really about reclaiming those aspects. I'm curious to hear, what is it about those qualities that are so important to you, and how do you as well help a man specifically to really reconnect to those qualities? And, just as well saying, for a personal level right now, like these are things as well that I'm personally working on to really
Yeah.
reclaim my joy and my play back into my life, because life's gotten a little bit, let's say, more serious.
Yeah. Um, well, if I was going to give you personal coaching on it, I'd say come up with an idea that's really scary, that's going to be like hilarious and bizarre. I don't know. I don't know, at the nearest city. Go fill a bunch of balloons with helium and glitter and just go walk around and hand people balloons and then pop them and then go, yeah, and then run away. I
I
mean,
love
like that's
that.
one possibility. But like, no,
Yeah, man.
realistically, man, we have to activate into actual play and joy.
Truth.
Maybe you learn how to juggle. Maybe you learn how to, um, I don't know, like I went to Burning Man and it really came in at like a perfect moment. I had a friend who was an old friend from when I was like 14. And, she was like, I'd gone through this divorce and she's like, yeah, you want to go to Burning Man? And I was like, perfect. Yes. And so I just went out there and I threw myself into creating art, and just dancing and moving and playing. And, and it really awoke something. And so then I just committed to how can I be more joyful in my life and my existence? So then I did this funny
Right.
thing while I was out, near the end of my cleanse. I was like, okay, I want to reactivate into the feminine, but I don't want to create any deep relationships yet. So I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Catch Me If You Can. It's this guy who like plays these different roles. Do you know what I'm talking about?
It's a good movie. Yeah, for sure.
It's a great movie. So anyway, I just came up with 3 different stories and I basically went to these bars. I live in New Orleans. So I'd go to these bars and I would just like hang out and like people would ask me about myself and I would tell them these elaborate, bizarre stories. I would eventually tell them it's not true, but like I would create these stories where people would be like, wait, you do what? The act of play. It's the act of play. And so that was one of the
Mm.
ways I did it. I also went and got a job working for Jazz Fest for a while because Jazz Fest is a whole festival. And I was like, yeah, I'll go hang out with a bunch of people at Jazz Fest and like listen to music. And so I think the thing is, we have to look at what would be fun and then we have to do it. And it can be absurd.
Yeah.
Like I did some pretty
Mm.
bizarre, absurd shit, but there is an act to play. You could go, my assignment for you, if you need more play, is to go find a city near you, go into the city square, write out the lyrics to an opera song, and I don't give a shit how good or bad you can sing. Sing it like you are fucking Luciano Pavarotti or whatever his name is, like the best opera singer of all time, and do the whole damn thing and record it and just enjoy it because people are going to be like, what the fuck? This is great. Even if you suck, they're going to like support it. They're going to cheer you on. They're going to love it. You know what I mean?
Dude, this is a fucking epic idea, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm just giving you like, this is what I would coach you on if we were in a coaching thing. And so I'm just giving it to you.
I love it, man. Yeah, fuck it. I mean, why not? Yeah, I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, you should do it. Let
Yeah,
me know,
man.
please. Go sing. Go sing for the people. They need it.
Thanks, man. All right, awesome. Well, I feel like this is a really good place for us to stop. Thanks for coming on, Max. This was an awesome conversation. Really appreciated your energy and everything that you brought. Yeah, really feeling the fire in you, man. All right. For everybody who checked in today, I hope you got a lot of value out of this conversation. Make sure as well to check out Max and his work. And until next time, signing off. Thank you for listening to this episode. Your time and attention is truly appreciated. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe to stay tuned for my upcoming episodes. And in case you know somebody who would find this episode helpful, I encourage you to pay it forward. Finally, if you've personally been receiving value from the show, one way you're able to support this podcast is by leaving a 5-star rating and a written review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Not only does this help more people find the show, but it also supports me in bringing more incredible guests on for the future. I'm your host, Alex Lehman, and until next time, signing off.